Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 5 Questions, One Cause with the Mental Elephant. Today, we are here with one of my very, very close friends that I love so dearly. We went to East Carolina together. He has been such a shining star when I went to East Carolina. He definitely introduced me a lot to Nigerian culture, along with my friends Stacy and Jennifer. So please, everybody, give a warm welcome to my friend Adedayo, who is actually going to talk to us about public policy, environmental changes, and just being African American in America and things that we definitely kind of look past and look over. So stay tuned if you all are interested. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Please introduce yourself, tell us who you are, let the herd know everything about you and what your passion is.
Yes, but first off, because you mentioned Jennifer, today's her birthday, so happy birthday, Jen. And then I am Adedayo. I am originally from Nigeria. I was born in Nigeria. Moved to the United States through an actual policy program that Bill Clinton had passed. Shout out to Bill Clinton, I guess. And yeah, so I went to ECU for my undergrad and got a job in DC, working for a nonprofit, doing community engagement work with other nonprofits in DC, mainly focused on like homelessness, youth education, and health equity. And then after that, while working, I went to school to get my master's degree in public policy, which we're going to be talking about at UMD College Park. And now I am moving on to other policy ventures that I'm looking very, very, very much forward to. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm very excited to talk about public policy. I love policy. I'm a policy nerd. I love elections. I'm an elections nerd. So yeah, just ready to talk.
Well, thank you for joining us. I will definitely say for our viewers, it is very rare to get a Black man on here that will say that he is a policy and elections nerd. So definitely here for it. I will say that's not my field, so that's why we open the interview to you. So let's go ahead and jump right in, guys. So our first question is going to be, with public policy controlling everything from housing, criminalization to healthcare, how does the system support or hinder mental health care in America?
Oh my days. Yeah, the system is just so convoluted. Like I remember like sometimes when I'd be in my policy classes and like I would listen and hear a lot about like these policy theories and like these policy constructs. And I just be thinking to myself, like, wow, human beings are so creative. We are really great at just creating a bunch of nonsense. That's literally what I got the most out of my policy classes was like human beings, we are the most convoluted thing on earth because a lot of this stuff like is like why, but like we just think we got brains. So like, I guess it was inevitable. But a lot of I think a lot of policy like wise, a lot of policy that's honestly made, I think it's kind of changing a little bit, but a lot of policy that's made is very like economic focused, and like worried about how it affects the economy, and stuff like that. And so like with that, like you really don't care about the mental aspect of anything, because you're just more worried about the economic aspect of whatever policy that you pass, because most policies, like most legislation does have to go through like at least in some way like has to make like fiscal sense, something like that. Like that's gonna be fiscally responsible, right? So like it's always like money and stuff like that. So like that's kind of like how that operates. But I think it's somewhat changing in a little bit, interesting enough, although this country is very polarized. I think the way that we understand what effective policies are is definitely changing. And the interesting thing is that like, you know, from an economic standpoint, it never made sense to me personally why you would want your workforce to be mentally ill, like, or just ill in general. Like a healthy workforce is a very productive workforce. If you're just a capitalistic person, like if that's just really what you are, then you would make like healthcare be like a top priority, because you would want your workers to be healthy so they can keep continuing making stuff for you. But you know, it's just interesting.
Yeah, I've definitely learned that America has at least corporate America, when it comes to the workforce, they're more of a we'll replace it type of
Yeah.
thing. Like, instead of helping or providing their current workforce with the things that they need for longevity, they'll just think, oh, well, once they're burnt out, we'll replace them.
Yeah, that's also very true, unfortunately.
So yeah, let's go ahead and hop right into number 3. We'll kind of hone in more so on your favorite topics. So, as a Black man working in the environmental justice field, what is the correlation between climate change and the African American community?
Okay, so environmental justice is basically like well, it started in like North Carolina. Shout out to North Carolina, Tar Heel State, whoop whoop. We love our Carolinas, but 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 yeah. So it started North Carolina, with some in a town in Warren County, and like they're trying to put like PCB, like some type of toxic waste, in some landfill that's gonna predominantly affect a Black neighborhood. And like those Black neighbors and like a bunch of like coalitions from outside of the country, outside of the county and the state, came together, did a protest for like maybe like several weeks, protesting the landfill dump, and they ended up not winning, of course, because they got dumped there anyways. But it, like the media attention is what like made environmental justice prominent. But environmental justice and like environmental racism, which is what environmental justice is all about, trying to fight, has been going on forever, like forever, since the first white man came onto this country called America, which is named after Amerigo Vespucci, which is an explorer. But that was just a little historical nugget. But nevertheless, he yeah, like from all the way from like, exterminating bison, which had an incredible negative effect on Native American communities. That's an example of environmental racism, all the way till now, where we have Black people, Black neighbors, and Black neighborhoods and Black communities living in highly polluted areas, and just areas that are not conductive for good health from a generational speaking lens of things. And the thing is that when it comes to environmental justice, is that it's been going on for years. So, and a lot of the things that air pollution, for example, can cause, you then see this thing where we talk about family history. We all talk about family history. We talk about health, this, and that, genetics, and all these other stuff. But the reality is that when you live in like generationally, like I'm talking like maybe 2 generations, 3 generations, when you live in an environment that is not very conducive to great health, generationally, your kids are not going to be healthy either. They're just going to pick up on what you just picked up.
Right.
And so that's how I view environmental justice. I think environmental racism is like the biggest sin of all in this country, because of how it has an effect on everything. So when I think of like, for example, there was a study that was done by some very smart people in Harvard. I mean, we're just assuming they're smart because they went to Harvard, but not everyone, as we can see with our presidents that go to Harvard, not all of them are smart. But nevertheless, we will move on from that trope, and say that very smart people at Harvard, they did a study, and they found that that populations with counties and cities with high levels of PM 2.5, which is particulate matter 2.5, which mainly comes from like it's a basic air pollution, but there's other like PM particulate matters, PM2, PM10, all these other stuff. But PM 2.5 is the most basic, or the most commonly researched one. And like other stuff such as like NO2, like stuff like that, like communities that had high levels of basically air pollution, right, had high levels of like COVID cases and COVID deaths. And so like just follow this path with me, right? So you have a study that said, okay, counties and cities with high pollutions have high COVID cases and deaths. All right, boom. All right. So then you dig into it a little more, and then you think to yourself, well, wait, Black people are like incredibly way more likely to be in areas that are highly polluted with like from an air pollution standpoint. Okay, so keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so then you find out that you think to yourself again, wait, when COVID happened, Black communities were disproportionately affected.
That's exactly where I was thinking. That's exactly where I thought this was going.
Yeah, so Black people were disproportionately affected by COVID. Okay, so you could take a logical leap and go, okay, air pollution bad is always in Black communities. Okay, COVID, whoa, air pollution. So what's going on here, right? Okay, so there we go. We're there. We meet them. So what is that the thing is that air pollution and PM 2.5, it causes like oxidative stress in your lungs, and it weakens the epithelial lining in your lungs, and that makes you susceptible to stuff such as lung cancer, COPD, asthma. Does that all sound familiar within the Black community? Like we have a disproportionate impact of that actually. So then you throw in a virus, which is a respiratory virus. It was a virus initially that attacked the lungs initially until like the variants that does its own thing. But initially, it attacked the lungs. Okay, so you throw a respiratory virus into a community that lives in a very urban setting. So like everyone's already close together and we already got air pollution, making our lungs weaker. Then you throw in a virus, you're gonna become even more susceptible to it because your lungs are not even from a generational, and also remember, this is a generational thing. Your lungs also are not that you're like a good lung necessarily is going to like help with COVID, because COVID, I mean, SARS-CoV-2 was an incredible virus, but things like that do matter though, right? So like you have a weak epithelial lining will like, it may not, like having a strong epithelial lining may not stop you from getting COVID, but it will help you recover quicker. So a weak epithelial lining will make it tougher to recover, you know? So that's kind of like the interesting link that, and that's honestly what made me, because like this whole, that's my thinking, wow, this guy has been studying or has been interested in environment his whole life. Nope, just happened like 2 years ago or a year ago. Like I just read up on that study and I was like, whoa, whoa, this is actually kind of interesting. And so then it became a passion. But yeah, so environmental justice is incredibly important. And like there's a plan to like really highlight it more in policies, especially environmental policy. But yeah, is there anything else I might have missed or anything like that? So yeah.
As is with a lot of things. I will definitely say, unfortunately, being African American in this country, we have, because of history, because of how we've been treated or the way things were set up, we are very detached and no longer have a trust in a lot of systems, i.e. healthcare. Black people do not have any type of trust in the healthcare system, any type of trust in the financial systems. There are tons of Black people who don't even want to use banks, who don't have bank accounts, who rather go to check cashing because they don't trust in the government. So definitely, I will definitely agree that it is sad that the African American community is not very heavy in environmental justice, because it is something that's very important to us. Just even from a couple of years ago, dealing with the Flint, Michigan crisis and everything that happened up there, and the fact that it still took them like 7 years to even completely, and it's still not even fixed. The pollution and how people are treated in Detroit overall, the pollution and air in specific like small Black towns or like Mississippi and a lot of places where people think that it's like swept under the rug. African Americans are still very much so struggling and very much so being put down or being put in spaces where they are not living their best life or living to their best fulfillment and don't necessarily know it. So with that being said, what is something that you would say the African American community definitely needs to pay attention to, or definitely we kind of need to focus on going forward?
So many of us are disenfranchised from politics, um, but and I understand it. I completely get it. Like, what has like a president ever done for you, really? Like, Obama ain't not do nothing for me, right? That's what we all say. Or like, George Bush, Ronald Reagan, go down the list, right?
Yeah, okay, I can tell you now, George Bush ain't never done nothing for me. I definitely got left behind. I'll go let that know right now. I'm one of them kids that got left behind.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, but I mean, George Bush it was an interesting era, the George Bush era, when you actually think about it.
Especially when you think about it now, since we went through the Trump era, it's really just like, granted, George Bush was an idiot. He was not nearly as bad as it could have been.
Yeah, but also it makes me realize that like that whole terrorism stuff was very like toxic, but very toxic. But yeah, so so yeah, so like with all that, I get people just don't want to be tapped in, and that's the federal system. But I do think that it's important for Black people to be invested in policy, at least local policy, at the very least, because like these things, whether you want to admit it or whatever delusional world you want to live in, these things affect you, right? And the reality is that like if your vote did not matter, like for real, like if your Black vote did not matter, like for real, like Black Lives Matter, but your vote doesn't, right? Um, if it didn't, like there wouldn't be a concerted effort to like take your voting rights away, because really they would just be like, who cares? What's the effort of doing that? Black people don't vote, right? Because why would you try to like? There's no reason. They're all risk averse. Like, why would you try to even like do all that when like
if your vote didn't matter,
right? If your vote didn't matter, why would you even attempt to like restrict like or make it hard? I mean, make it hard for Black people to vote. So, put in some convoluted laws that makes it hard for Black people to vote. But so is this to me is like if they're doing all this, there's gotta be like there's definitely a reason. It's because your vote matters. Like you as a coalition of Black people, like your vote like matters massively, especially now as we go on into this minority majority country. Like your votes are gonna matter even more, and your participation in civic engagement and like engaging with the community, like, and all these other stuff, it's going to matter even more as we go into this like minority majority nation, because you don't want to be the minority that gets left behind. Because the reality is that like, although we are moving to a minority majority nation, like we black people may not be the majority of the minority. It very may, and it's not like it's a bad thing, but it's very maybe will most likely be like Hispanic or Latinx people who are the minority majority, and that's just in the sense of like, okay, like we have to make sure that like as we move into this multifaceted, multicultural country, that like our views and our issues are heard.
right?
And if you don't speak up, then when your issues aren't respected or like put into a bill, like it's just hard to like, like say anything about it. So for example, you like a lot of people, like I hear a lot of people complain about high drug prices, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all like just talk about how terrible high drug prices are, right? And this and that, right? So like literally just yesterday, there was a vote that that did not pass because it had no Republican support, and it was going to cap inflation at $35 per month or something like that, $35 something, and and it was supposed to be some type of drug pricing initiative that the United States was going to use. It's really going to be through like Medicare and stuff like that. Just a little test about like capping drugs, and it failed. And the thing is that that type of like legislation impacts you. Like we it's hard to say as a Black community that you don't know someone who doesn't suffer from diabetes. Like I think it's almost impossible because we know how diabetes is unfortunately like rampant within our community. But like a legislation that would have capped the insulin that your aunt, your grandma, your granddaddy, your nephew, or whomever needs to survive, because we all know like insulin is basically the survival juice when it comes to diabetes, depending on the type, but mainly regardless, diabetes in general, like that bill to make it much more affordable for you and your family and everything like that, it failed because like no Republican supported it, or like I haven't read through all the numbers, but maybe some Democrat didn't. But like that type of like policy not being passed impacts you because like you no longer like this listening is incredibly expensive. So like paying attention to like stuff like that and figure out, okay, hold on. What senators was it that said no to this bill? Boom, boom, boom. Fill out the names, fill out the districts, whether or not they're in your district or whatever it may be. Like, just this is important because these things impact you. Like, it might seem like Washington, D.C. is so far away, and it kind of really is, depending on where you are, especially in California. It's definitely far away from you. But it may seem far away, but like the impact of it is so close by. Yep. Because really, at the end of the day, Washington, D.C., this is I'm going to end with this, right? This is why local policy is important. Because at the end of the day, the federal government, realistically speaking, at the end of the day, is really just one big bank, just big bank. Then all the policies that they've passed are just like funding policy, really policy. There's funding things, funding programs, funding stuff, right? So the federal government is a big, big bank, right? So, like, for example, with the American CARES Act and all these stuff that was passed during the stimulus during the pandemic, it was just throwing money at stuff. So the same thing that just got passed with this climate change bill, it's just money just being thrown. So like the money goes into the states, right? And then the states, they then split it among the municipalities, right? And so the municipalities are really the ones, like your local government is really the one that spends the money. Mm-hmm. So your local government is really the one that spends the money. So that means that, but that money can be like, it can be tied to stuff. Like, for example, with the Jamaica Rescue Act, right? A lot of that COVID money was tied to like, it had to be like a public health related type of thing, mm-hmm. Which if you're a public health person, it's very broad. You can make a case for a lot of things that you're like, it's not really it, but they'll be like, yes, it is, because guess what? We need to fix that road because how else is the ambulance going to get there? You know, like stuff like that. So you can, move around it. But like, yeah, so like municipalities and local government are really where where the money is actually spent and how like it's like pushed in. So that's why pay attention to the local issues, stuff like that is incredibly important because that's where the money is coming to, and your localities are the ones that really put the emphasis on like what part, like a park, a new library, this and that, our school districts, just paying attention to all that is incredibly important.
So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for these amazing bits of information. Thank you very much for pushing this conversation about public health and health policy. If our listeners wanted to learn more, hear more from you, or be able to interact with you, how would we get in touch?
Yes, so I have a podcast where I talk about stuff like this. To kind of nerd up a little bit for a long time, actually, gosh. But I do have guests that come on. Like, actually, the host was a guest on my podcast not too long ago. So we were talking about mental health. So I have guests that come on my podcast and everything like that, and talk about whatever they're interested in. So if you're a smart person, you can be stupid too. It's okay to have stupid people on your podcast. Is it? No, maybe not. No, maybe not a good idea.
I mean, Charlemagne has a podcast, so.
But he has money, so he can do it. So yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. That was a good one. But yeah, so do have a podcast. It's called the Seesaw Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram. The Seesaw Podcast is literally what it is. The Seesaw. But my Instagram is greatest_African. It's greatest_African. And yes, whatever you're thinking, yes, I am the greatest African. So,
all right. Well, once again, thank you, Adedayo, for joining us. It has been such an amazing opportunity to be able to talk to you and learn about everything. And thank you guys for watching. So once again, this is 5 Questions, 1 Cause with the Mental Elephant. I am extremely grateful for everybody that listened all the way through. We will be back next Sunday, 7 p.m. with a new upload. Peace. You know you like that.